Hey everyone, Direfun here, back again with more Pokemon Sage. Yeah, so in the next two videos, I'm gonna try and get through the rest of the Pokemon decks. And then, with a lot of the feedback, I'm probably gonna do a big overview, kind of a quick succession, scripted work on what I think of each individual Pokemon as it is. To start off today, Pokemon 104 in the Pokemon Sage decks. Adamite and Orbitom. Okay. I feel like there's more symbolism here for atoms than I'm used to, but with the circular patterns, I can definitely appreciate electrons and protons, just more active nature. So, with that active nature, and with electrons in particular, I can understand the electric type, and because they're everywhere, maybe they're normal? It's a little different, but maybe that can work. I I can't tell if they're going for a nose pass mustache here or not. I just woke up, so it might take me a little bit. Uh, Adamite and Orbitom. Orbital and Atom. I don't understand the hands on Orbitom. There's a lot of things I don't understand about Orbitom. Hmm. But I definitely like the progression. I'm not sure. I still don't think those hands are needed. But I could be missing something there with the design. But I do like the simplicity of Adamite and the more complex nature of Orbitom as it is. There's not much I could say on these, really. I like the different natures. You can definitely tell that these two floats, based off even just their arm posture. This doesn't look like it's prepared to stand. More like a Magnemite. Also, it kind of looks like an angry ant head. If you look at it a certain way. But anyway. This one, it looks like it's hovering on a cloud. And has almost the Buddhist rings that you can see on... That's actually kind of funny. Enru in One Piece. I'll put up a picture somewhere. If that comes into mind. It's almost more godly. More structured. I'm just gonna have to move on. Squink and Squidrift. I can definitely see the skull that's supposed to be painted on. And honestly, it might actually just be painted on if that's in the Pokedex. I'm also going to move it a little bit that way because that next one looks pretty cool. So yeah, maybe this Pokemon actually does paint itself. But again, the One Piece references. So Squink. It's good that I go directly to Mario and Splatoon. Yeah, it definitely has more of a resemblance to something from Mario than Inkay, which is good. There's already a squid Pokemon, but if you can make it just a little bit different, it helps. When did Inkay come out? Released October 2013. Squink would have been beforehand, but it still shows some common design elements more associated with squids than anything. Though I will say this does kind of look inspired by Mario, and I don't exactly know why. I think this is supposed to be looking like a hot air balloon design. It's really hard to tell because this is supposed to be flying, but it almost looks like it has legs and arms, like some sort of zombie. I can't say anything else other than I'm glad that they didn't use the same purple entirely, but you can see aspects in Squink's lips and Squidrift's eyes, which is kind of nice. So there is still a somewhat color through. Maybe they should have used the same eye color, but maybe not. You can still follow through because it's yellow in a otherwise purple. They have yellow eyes on an otherwise purple body, so where else would the yellow come from? Borealis. That's absolutely amazing. So Dark Psychic with a regular Aurora Borealis makes sense to me. It's easier to see at night, I would presume, because of how the magnetic field is shown. And because it's a magnetic field, maybe that has to do with ESP. So it's psychic. So to show the Borealis correctly, you would want something that's dark and psychic. And the boar is actually pretty cool too. There aren't many Pokemon that are just straight up boars that look this threatening. But Borealis, I could see this going on my team. It's not as simple, but it radiates the same cool factor to me as Absol. So Absol is still edged out, but Borealis's colors are fantastic, especially in this art. Definitely on my team. I like how they really accentuate the Borealis thanks to the dark typing and the dark color scheme of the rest of the boar. So these two are by themselves, Chelanite and Galaxagos. I really like the idea of a floating space turtle or tortoise. And seeing these, if I could add a Pokemon in actual canon, it would probably be something like this, just because of I live in a desert. Tortoises are amazing, and just seeing something that can be so old in space, which is so much older, kind of gels well for me. So I really, really like Galaxagos. That would be a defense Pokemon I would have on my team all the time. Chelanite really works better in age with the concept that I just talked about. Because of the older beings being associated with space, it looks a little off for me. But it adheres to the same baby principles that I appreciate. It's got much softer corners, much softer edges than Galaxagos. And absolutely represents a smaller body in space, thanks to the size difference in craters. Even if, yeah, it's definitely supposed to be smaller. Maybe I don't like how round it is. Galaxagos is more oblong. It definitely looks more like a shell too, which is interesting. Maybe if it was more of a strange shape other than what looks like a ghastly. But I like it. This one definitely seems to be. It brings to mind water more clearly to me than this one, which represents space. I probably wouldn't guess the psychic if I. Well, no, I probably wouldn't guess the psychic if I looked at this. If I looked at this Pokemon by itself, I would think rock, and I'd probably look at the skin and go, I mean, it's pink, but it has flippers. Maybe it's doing a Gorbis thing. I really appreciate the design, and surprisingly, Galaxagos brought a beefy design to my attention. I generally don't like those type of strong defending type designs. So Magnetoger. Now, talking about the other ones, I can understand why this one's so different. Hmm. So it's just pure steel. Absolutely represents that to a fault. Initially, you could think of this brown muddling as mud on its feet, but I think it's more supposed to be rust. Because of that, it does give more color, which is greatly appreciated on a pure steel design, many of which are just gray. And so it's very nice to see that because this is supposed to be kind of like an oven, seemingly, or maybe a steam engine, it's definitely got the heat coming out of its eyes. It also looks like its mouth could open up to bite coal and power itself, which I kind of like. It has a collar, which also looks like formed steel. And I don't exactly know where the color on its claws would come from, but it complements the rusted look very well, that orange. Even though it doesn't connect to the rest of it, maybe its eyes should be a brighter orange instead. Maybe the disunity is a blessing in disguise because of just how samey the rest of it is. It's so gray. But I appreciate the black for its joints and its smokestacks on top. Very nice. I don't think I'd use it, but I would appreciate it every time I came into battle with it. Minarak? Maybe Minarak and Trenchula. So ground bugs. Okay, I'm gonna go through this list. Nincada, Wormadam. I don't care about that one. There's Dwebble and Crustle. Which honestly, I like these designs way better. And that's it. We really have a shortage of bug ground. So, whoever the designer is, good on them for recognizing that we need some more there. And I like the inspiration. Mining bugs. After looking a little bit, I can see the inspiration. There's a mining helmet on each of these. And a bright gem that probably works as some sort of light right in the middle of their skull. I really like that. Okay. And then this one definitely has a drill look. Looks like it would have helped humanity before excavation machines were really a thing. Minarak, I didn't see that initially, but yeah, no, it's I don't think it's abdomen, but it's back. It is absolutely a drill. More soft drill, which for the baby Pokemon, I like. Definitely it's soft fur too. Oh, I like this. Minarak, absolutely love it. Trenchula, I love it too. The Joltik line is probably my favorite canon spider Pokemon line. But this, it would throw up a good fight. I probably would change Trenchula's face just a little bit. Maybe not make it... Maybe I'd just get rid of the pupils. Because imagine how just menacing an angry gem. You wouldn't really be able to see where it's looking. Maybe it'd look like it would be looking at you all the time. So just something more threatening. But other than that, I really like it. It definitely comes across Tarantula with all of its fur, which honestly kind of makes it adorable. Makes it huggable. And lots of spikes. Cliche as they are, they do make it look a little more threatening. The fangs I really appreciate. Kind of unique to use full drills as fangs. Puddle, Tricata, and Terracotta. These designs are very, very similar, in my opinion. Especially Tricata and Terracotta. It looks like it just moved up. It itself just grew. If you made this a 2-stage, I think it'd work out a whole lot better. Just because you can see the sap... Well, almost a sapling. This little plant grow into a round cactus with somehow a crown. And to go from a circular pot to a square one obviously changes a little bit. Its design aesthetic. Circles being cuter for baby Pokemon. Rounded edges and all. But if you go from circle to diamonds to, I think, a rectangle, yet it's a little bit different, but with the angles, you really can't tell. It just vaguely brings across a longer body on Terracotta than Tricata. And the plant doesn't change a whole lot. It just almost inflates and gets a crown. I really think this would have benefited without 3 evolutions. And I even like that Puddle digs itself into the ground and becomes more stable as it's growing. And in fact, might even rely too heavily on that. Seems like a defending Pokemon. But at least some sort of defender. That's its outstanding trait. And then attack, which is represented by its long, barbed vines or root. I don't want to say that they're roots so much, because those are some thick roots. Aside from my problems with the line itself, I like how the mouth is easily represented by spikes, but I think that's pretty cool. It's cracked. I find it strange that Pottle is cracked, but maybe that is why it's going into the ground. So with baby Pokemon, it itself looks different, which is very nice. It looks a bit more threatening, especially if it's putting up its arm. Ah! And with its darkened eyes, definitely a little more threatening than most baby Pokemon. And a little more threatening because of it throughout the entire line. And I like the concept. A plant growing along with its pot, pretty solid. So a lot of this, it's cool, but again with the concept, I don't think you can run that far with just a plant and pot growing up. I think 2 stages would have been perfect. Maybe that should have been all it was. Publant and Cahokinsect. I'm gonna go with Publant and Cahokinsect. And this is where I'm definitely gonna have to say that over the last few videos, I've been getting a few comments about Pokemon Sage in general, and I had no idea it was in South America. That was what one of the Pokemon said, or one of the commenters said on the first video for Pokemon Sage. So immediately, both of these look like physical representations of sugar skulls in, even though it's not South America, Mexican heritage and celebration. Maybe it comes from Aztec culture, which this one with its jeweled eyes brings more ideas towards. But the representation of a skull that isn't supposed to be threatening, and more representation of death, I really like. Its bright colors definitely don't denote something threatening. In fact, I think it's supposed to give you the dual nature of a skulled insect being threatening and just flamboyant and appreciating life. So the flower is on its eyes, and also matching with the eyes of the skull itself. Really like. I don't think I like the color connection as a Pokemon, just because it's so different. But using the same colors as Mexican celebration and sugar skulls entirely, I absolutely like. So I'm also conflicted on that, because I don't think the colors specify Pokemon at all. In fact, they almost look too intricate to be Pokemon. But it works on a concept level, so I'm torn. Cahokinsect, I like a whole lot more, because to me it meshes the two ideas much better, which that's great, because it's a baby. Publant is a baby Pokemon. It's supposed to be unsure. It's supposed to not know too much and be less experienced. Cahokinsect is bringing these concepts together better. I like that it has 4 eyes and that it's so flat. That's very different from what I'm used to for Pokemon insects. Its jeweled eyes denote that it's gathered up something during its lifetime, and it even looks, even though it's supposed to be an exoskeleton on its back, it almost looks like a shield on its back. And the way that the exoskeleton or shield morphs down into the nose socket of a skull, but also leaving room for a gem on the head of the Pokemon, I like it. I could see this being on my team. I don't think I'd rock it if I had access to the entire Pokedex, but it would be with me for at least the first 4 gyms, I'd assume. Yeah, man. That'd be cool. Kahokasect in a Pokemon game. I'd jive with that. I'd jive with that. Cobrasket and Chambra. With all the diamonds, and with Chambra's end tail, I think this is supposed to be a Diamondback. So, yeah, definitely coming to mind more southern North America. I like the idea of having a basket on the snake just to denote some difference, and because it's just not wearing it, it's morphed into the top of the skull. It doesn't just look like a snake wearing a hat. But I'm very confused about why they made the hat tilt so much towards the back. And why they added a nub on the top. Because I'm just thinking about straw hats, and I don't think I've ever seen one, or just a woven hat, with a bulb on the top. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've only ever seen them tied together or woven together to a point, or to sprout up above. Never, never a bulb, and I don't see how that would connect back to a snake. Now the eyes I can understand. Big eyes for a small snake. Perfectly understandable. Tongue coming out. Kinda cool. With little fangs popping out too, you can understand what the mouth is. Cobrasket's a little too simple for Pokemon, I think. Because it looks like a snake melded with a hat. The hat isn't incorporated pretty much anywhere else in the design, other than where it would be if you placed a hat on a snake. Chambra, on the other hand, it has more personality. It's got a smug look on its face and a more bulbous upper body, which I don't think I've ever seen on a snake, other than to denote, to try and scare off predators and maybe some prey to startle them into submission. But I think they're cobras. I think cobras do that. They have the flaps of skin that come off. Though Chambra, maybe they're cobras. But anyway, Chambra, it's a little bit different. It's more rounded, but it's got spikes, which is kind of interesting. It's looking like it's trying to lure you into a false sense of security. And then it's just going to stab you in the back. Which is perfect for a snake! And keeping with a more warning system on the end of its tail, like a rattlesnake, it obviously displays the danger of coming into close contact with Chambra. I'm kind of torn about having these red jets of color around the body, but I kind of like it too. They almost come to a point and look like a flower ready to bloom, just with 5 points. And again, it brings more sharp contrast to the face in particular. With all those points around a circular object, your eye is kind of brought to the face of Chambra. In fact, there are 6 arrows pointing you to the face of Chambra. Kind of. Which I like. It definitely shows the intention of that Pokemon. Chambra, and then there's a line of 2. Oh, Cariop? And Chiroglyph. Okay. So Cariop. I like the concept. I like that it almost has a third eye in the middle of its forehead. That's just shut. It plain old shut, so it has the capabilities that you would think of It would have psychic capabilities, I would think. But they are not honed yet. I don't remember the typing of the other one, but I hope it's ground psychic. Its tail also looks almost sentient. Again, it looks almost psychic. So I'm really hoping. But the pops of color really help the ground typing. And you can understand with a more tamed tail and a seemingly third eye that is shut, that it can develop into something more powerful and a special attacker. Maybe I'd use... The design itself, I love the shapes. The shapes are almost perfect. Maybe a little too much neck fluff, but it works. I don't think I like the color of the paws, the nose, and the tips of the ears. I think they should stay brownish too, to keep the focus on the eyes and the tail. But maybe less saturation, because that just looks a little too bright. It looks almost off, like unnatural. Maybe. Chiroglyph. Okay, thank God. Thank God. Okay. So, now that it evolves, the purple is more pronounced. The tail is holding an eye, which is a little bit strange. And its third eye has opened, so it does display vast psychic powers. Ah. And to add on top of that, the blue brings your attention more to the tips of the wings and the headdress. I'm not exactly sure why, because blue, a turquoise. I'm not sure if turquoise is meant to be anything in particular. Maybe it's a rock used in rock divination, is that a thing? To denote some sort of psychic awakening? Maybe. Even if not, the color contrast between how bright and saturated the turquoise is bounces off the somewhat more saturated lavender and the dulled gray. Actually, it kind of matches the gray. It's gray. The tan. The saturation is kind of similar there. But, yeah, you definitely see the blue immediately. I really like it. It definitely more... It's supposed to be more of a griffin, and I would even say an Egyptian griffin. A lot of these are bringing Egyptian influences. And then, looking immediately to the next two, I can only think of Yu-Gi-Oh! But anyway, that's those two. Chiroglyph. I could probably have this on my team. Ground Psychic. That's pretty nice. That's a pretty nice combo. I can't wait to do that. Whenever I go over every Pokemon, I'm going to have, right at the end, what I would have on my team. Because, some of these I would have. I'm still looking at you, Pepit line. But I'm also a sucker for dog Pokemon. And this is like a dog flying Pokemon. I'm also a sucker for flying Pokemon. Psychics aren't my go-to type, but I like it. It looks like this could also put up a fight and not just get one shot by the right move. The ground typing too kind of solidifies that. Gives it more grounded strength. So next would be Necronite and Gravelum. This is strange. I feel like the drawing is a little bit off here. Because of how symmetrical Gravelum's supposed to be, I get the feeling that Necronite is supposed to be as well. I'm gonna look up their sprites, just to make sure. Yeah, no, it's supposed to look a whole lot more symmetrical. This looks a little off. With the angle, you would expect that there is some showing of this side. And I don't even know what's happening here. That looks like a face, but there's no face. Similar on the viewing side, which is strange. But I'll think of it as symmetrical because that's more what the sprite portrays. So it portrays almost like interlocking blocks, which is kind of nice. Rocks that fit perfectly into one another definitely seem a little bit mystical. The hieroglyphs on necronite and gravelum denote some sort of strangeness, so psychic works. Okay, necronite in particular doesn't portray to me sentience. To me, it looks like a quest item. Gravelum, there's an argument to be made that these could be really angry eyebrows and eyes. And maybe there's another one underneath that's eyes, but this one's just a little too hard to see. And with no pupils denoting where it would even look. Like, again, Nosepass has. Unknown has eyes that you can look around. None are popping to mind. Maybe there are a few. But if there are Pokemon that have solid color eyes, they usually denote life somewhere else. Like Parasect immediately comes to mind. Yeah, it has basically no eyes, but it looks like a crab. Magnetoger over here, it looks like it has no eyes and it can't really look anywhere else. But you can see the smoke billowing on top, so it's not just down. Heat's supposed to be coming out of those eyes too, I suspect. And so whenever it's not active, you would just not see light coming out of there. But how would you denote necronite and gravelum being active and inactive? How would you be able to tell that your necronite or gravelum is dead? Gravelum, maybe this purple thing that almost looks like a scarf or a scarf, neckerchief, something. Maybe that would disappear. They would stop floating, but then how would you tell if it's dead or just sleeping? You can't really check the pulse on a rock. And in a game where you don't have touch yet anyway, I feel like there's a problem with that. You can't even do the cartoon thing where you put X's over its eyes because where are even its eyes? I guess you could and then denote where the eyes are, but maybe that would mess with the player's conceived notion of what makes these Pokemon. Even Pokemon that are items at least have something that conveys sentience. Like Vanillite, it has eyes and a mouth, despite people not liking it because it's just eyes and a mouth on ice cream. These two, I'm not such a big fan of. Dillaweed and Pangolash. They look pretty adorable. So Armadilloweed definitely looks like a cartoonish rendition of an armadillo. And some weeds growing on the armadillo. So a little bit of a parasitic relationship there. But I really like even just the hole punches in its ear and the tail. It adds a bit of character. And that's because there's already a parasitic relationship, it doesn't look that out of place. Also, the weed looks somewhat immature in that its coloring is strange. It's not just a vibrant green, more like Pangolash. So you can tell that it's somewhat new and implanted on Dillaweed. Maybe. I generally associate newer plants with brighter green, which... And it still works. It's just unhealthy. Maybe it just attached recently and is having a hard time on Dillaweed. Maybe. The red nose is a little weird just because of the shape alone. Maybe I would have rounded it out. But I like the angle that it makes. It complements the ears and the tail very well. So it's hard for me to tell. But This thing curling up into a leaf ball, that's adorable. I can completely understand that. And the brown color scheme again brings to mind rock. Especially its tail and ears, they look stiff. They look at least hard as a rock. So, I appreciate the typing. Pangalash, its steel is a little bit on the nose, and I'm not entirely sure how it would have gotten that. I associate steel with human engineering more than I should, really. Because in Pokemon, they're just randomly steel Pokemon. Why shouldn't I assume that it just grows steel? But onward from that, I find it interesting how its rocky ears and almost that same head pattern turn into leaves. So maybe this is a weird plant that feasts off of the rock typing. Which honestly could work. If you did an even earlier baby form, maybe it'd just be pure rock. And then grass rock as the plants are taking over, and then grass steel once it's done. I kind of like that. But it'd probably be too much. Maybe not, because I like the design here. Pangalash. I'm not entirely sure what the animal inspiration is. In my mind, I'm thinking mongoose. But I'm Pangalash. Maybe red panda, but yeah. The red comes back with a vengeance, and it looks kind of like berries coming off the plants too, which I appreciate. The rounded nose, I like, and even just a little bit of red introduced behind the eyes. I like that. Brings a little bit more color to where the eyes are, and hidden behind the leaves. I think it's needed. And just in general, all the red focusing on the face. Just to easily lead people into where the face is. Its claws have become much more powerful. It looks more threatening, but it also looks more experienced, and not just using its natural body as obvious threat. It looks like it's got power in its torso, instead of just power because of spikes. So I really like that line. Dillweed is just so adorable, and Pangalash, yeah, man, I could see me using it in a fight. Grass Steel, we all know how strong that type is. Ignishield, Shellicine, and Flarapin. My mind draws the obvious connection between the Flarapin line and Turtonator, despite Turtonator only being a one stage. Obviously, Turtonator came afterwards. I like generally how Ignishell is more rounded. I probably would have stuck its head either further down. No, that wouldn't. I was going to say, and maybe without its shell, but that's part of its name, and I can't really do that. Maybe I would have added the rock typing, just because that looks like a geode. It doesn't look like part of Ignishell necessarily. So maybe having it fire rock, and then brandishing the rock a little bit more on its design. Maybe giving it more of a furrowed brow because of the rock, and then extending it into Shellicine and Flarapin to give it a less rounded head. And much less spiky than Turtonator. That's too spiky. But Flarapin, its head looks almost too rounded. Maybe its next spikes could be more rocks or steel at this point. But I think Shellicine should have had more brown on its head and be less rounded, because it doesn't look like... It looks like a baby and a half. Like it's somewhere between a second stage and a first stage. Which I guess that is just second stage anyway. Half the time. And then I think that they're taking a lesson from Charmander and Charmeleon, just darkening the yellow-orange to a red-orange. Which that does show a straight through evolution. Maybe this line needs something more to... I guess the shape on the head and the eye color is already bringing a trait throughout the line. Maybe this is the smooth headline, despite this. Maybe the round headline. Maybe that'd be better. I don't know. These two still look too similar. Taking the head out of the equation, I think the body morphs at a fantastic degree. I like the completely smooth shell and not fully encasing the body that Ignishell has, then fully encasing and a little bit of spikes on Chelicine, and then reinforced and spiked everywhere on Flarepin's back. That does add a little bit of contrast to the rounded head that's still there, which is nice. I think Flarepin's design by itself is really strong, but I think Ignishell and Celicine's just a little too similar in just the head. The arms, they evolve perfectly fine. The legs, again, perfectly fine. The tail's a little plain, but honestly, I don't care too much about that. Because it gets longer. You could add something, but then that might just be overloading and unnecessary. Maybe the one fix I would do is just shrinking the head on Ignishell down so that it also looks like the neck grows alongside the line. That might be the only thing that needs correcting here. Well, okay. And maybe having some sort of secondary color to finish up the eyes for the whole line. Okay, two things. Otherwise, solid. I don't think I'd use them because they're not my cup of tea, but solid. I'm not saying that because it's a bad... I'm not acting this way because it's a bad design. But Desola, I loved it. Like, right here. It's like, oh my god. That's adorable. Please tell me the line's gonna... Okay. I can get behind it. I can get behind... That was my thought process there. Desola. So simple. So weak looking. That's an action pose I don't see very often. It's got such a tiny body. I think it represents ghost and flying superbly. I'm not entirely sure what's supposed to be on its head. It's obvious on the other two, but this... Maybe it's just supposed to be ambiguous because it's soul. It's more of a soul. But I really like how the tail goes into almost a wisp at the end. And how strange and almost hand-like the feet are. I can only bring to mind, I think it's a TikTok, it might be a Vine, of a black robot that is supposed to look almost like an ostrich, but it's just human hands. And it's acting almost animal-like, but with human hands. Necro. Okay. I can still get behind the design. It looks like it is a dying bird. And that's perfect. It's Necro. Perfect. Dead crow. I love the play on words. It's too great. So having less feathers on the arms, I love it. So it still portrays the flying type, and it's portraying ghost through dying. Its head being exactly what a bird's skull is kind of cool and kind of a little dark for Pokemon, but I like it. I like dark. I'm not entirely understanding about what these white things are supposed to be. Maybe they're representations of bits of soul. It might just be too much. On Desola, I think it looks great. It's almost a yin. I think yin is black with a white inside. But on Necro, it's a little strange. Just because I don't know what it's supposed to be. The bones seem to be more of a tan color, so the pure white is a little strange. But again, I love how the tail and even the top bit of its head just flows off into a wisp. And it's almost mimicking Pidove, but it's just dead. So I really like it. Voltergeist, it's a big bird. Mainly, I just don't like its head. It almost looks like an angry skull with a bird popping out. But if it's supposed to be a vulture, it is the best Pokemon vulture that I know of, and I'd probably have it on my team. Ghost Flying's still hecka cool. But the Sola's just such a cool design. I love it. I'm just kind of saddened at how maybe realistic the other two are, and how on the brink of cluttered their design is. It's not fully there, but it's a little cluttered. Okay, so here's maybe something on Voltergeist that could work. The body itself almost looks like a trailing spirit, as it is, almost like a hunter wearing a top half of a bird. Maybe you could just continue with that. Maybe continue with the skull color through this dark gray on its head, get rid of the ribs, and bonify its legs a bit more. Or maybe just not have legs. No, the legs are kind of cool though. It's part of a vulture. So have their feet be more bony and jagged. Maybe missing a toe. Just to show that it's more of the carcass of a bird being possessed by a spirit. And it's just losing parts every now and again as it's been possessed for so long. I think that could be a pretty good motif. It'd be hecka dark, but with some Pokedex entries, it could work. It'd be the darkest thing, and if that's the case, that'd be on my team just because of... I like me some horror. And that'd be the darkest thing that I think Pokemon has. Dinky Wink and Dunky Wunker. Okay. So, aside from being the most adorable names I have said, brings to my mind something you would say to a dog. Dunky Wunker on 4 legs, almost in a panting position as it waves its tail. To me, as a dog person, that's perfect. That right there, it's so good. And then just adding adding water typing, or adding a fish, I can kind of understand that, that it's supposed to be a fish-dog type hybrid. And I like that. Dinky Wink even looks like just a little happy puppy. And then just the colors. I like how desaturated everything is. I find it a little strange that they aren't focusing so much on the head on Dunky Wunker, more on the fish parts, which maybe accentuates the fish typing more than just a really strange dog. Which, maybe it needs, maybe it doesn't. I don't think it needs so much because of just how weird the spine is. It shows fish. It's just really strange that it has legs. That's just really strange. But it's very unique, so I really can't complain there. And Dinky Wink just looks like a fish. The rock typing isn't so shown, but the hard shell on its body does represent it, so players could probably figure that out. And because of that, and because it's not so blatantly gray, like steel, they could probably tell that this is a defender, and maybe correlates the rock typing. They kind of represent strong jaws, but I really think that they should have been more physical defenders. But I can understand why, and I definitely understand why defense just edges out speed in Dunky Wunker. I think it should have been a little bit stronger. Maybe you can still keep attack higher, but that defense is just so close to its speed. They do still look speedy, though, so it's hard. It does look like a balanced Pokemon, but I would have thought defense more than attack. I don't know. Just my interpretation. Calphite and Indralith. My god, you got swole. Calphite? It looks pretty adorable. Maybe I would have kept the neck a little bit longer. Maybe it looks too round. Just, its body is very round. Its legs go to a rounded edge. Maybe a little bit on the neck, a little bit of the legs, just to get it more than just a big, round, fat blob. And to better indicate what its next evolution would be. Right now, it just looks like it'll get fatter, because its most defining trait seems to be its chest that almost touches the ground. So if you extend the neck, extend the legs, you could see a little bit better what its next evolution would be. I don't know what the heck is happening for its horn on the end of its nose. And then its eye just looks really, really low. Like it's in its skull, a centimeter from the edge of its eye would be its teeth. And that's so strange. I can understand why you did it so you can see the eye in this pose, but then why not just change the pose and make the eye up here? That looks really strange. That is a really, really low eye. Even here it looks somewhat natural, but then you put the eye down here and it's real strange. Other than that, so if I get rid of all that, it looks unnaturally swole, but for a rock ground, it's gonna be physical. It has to be, right? It looks like the perfect representation of a tank. Solakari. I really like the bright colors on Solakari. I wanted to see the tip of its hair brought to mind the Mexican flag to me, and I wanted to make sure that was the right colors. And yeah, if looking this way, in this orientation, left to right is the same orientation left to right as the primary Mexican flag colors, green, white, red. Even though it has a seal on the top, I like it. And as an American, the yellow and red bring to mind New Mexico to me. And then the bright, vibrant colors, this thing looks like it's so happy. It keeps... Yellow is what your eyes immediately go to, so having it on the beak and the wings, and then having the shade of the body cover over some of the yellow so that it goes more to the wings and beak. I think that's genius. Just so your eye isn't so overwhelmed by every color. They desaturated the green and red just a little bit to keep the edge of the yellow out, but then also blocked out a lot of the yellow. That was really nice touch. And then keeping the tail and legs a dark color keeps your mind up here, or keeps your eye up here. So really, the wings probably help guide your eye going from the tip of the wing down, going to the beak, and then up to the other wing. So I love its posture. I really wouldn't have thought that the colors would have worked. Nurshari. Oh, nurse shark. Okay, so that is a thing. So they just took something in real life and made it more of a nurse. I really like it. The curls in the tail and around the mouth definitely bring to mind Nurse Joy. I know what you mean, or what you're doing there. The pink, again, lots of Nurse Joy. And honestly, I just like it. It's a single stage. It doesn't overstay its welcome for what is basically a reference to the real world and Pokemon. I like it. Even this little jet, this little brim popped up on the shark's head brings to mind a nurse's cap. It wouldn't if you didn't have the plus mark on it, so definitely needed there. And because of that, maybe the fin is supposed to look like there's a bandage over it, which I kind of like. Very simple, but conveys everything perfectly. And very simple colors. Works well when contrasted with this, so that the whole Pokedex doesn't look like a chaotic mess of colors. So, definitely nice. Definitely nice. Uh-oh. Oh, no, the next one looks so cool. Lone Leaf and Forthorn. Looks like some sort of folklore. And then covering its leaves, it looks like a creature that it really doesn't want to be seen. So having a ghost, even though it doesn't really represent a phantom or something, but just having it hide and be more of a something you would think is hiding in a forest might bring to mind a ghost. And then just kind of the nightmare fuel of, are those extra hands? How many arms does this thing have? Yeah, it's a simple design. It doesn't. It again kind of brushes up against the line of what is a ghost type, but I appreciate that. I wouldn't have thought Drifblim was a ghost type, but I think I originally thought it was a poison type just because of how purple it was. And yeah, flying makes sense. It's a balloon, but why would it be ghost? So this thing's kind of close, and I love Drifblim. This thing's, I think it comes across the ghost idea and just expands it just a little bit more. So takes it away from ghost and makes it more mystery typing, or maybe folklore. Going back to that. So next up, okay. Originally I thought Chihaha was adorable, but I'm always a sucker for horse Pokemon too. And these things just look so bad, man. They look so bad. Oh, I didn't even notice that at first. Okay, so Culturgeist and Phantasmare. I already love the little hoof bursts from the bottom of its leg, having its mane and its tail. Also, this ghosty, wispy smoke. I love that. Having its eye represent more of a spirit, but also making it look like a flame, kind of like Sans. And then having just a shield on its head. That makes it all look so cool and tough. But then, what didn't register in my mind is that you have the internal skeleton showing, which is super cool. Usually, I don't see art that intricate in Pokemon designs. I can kind of see the shadow of the ribs over here connecting it back to the leg bones. You can't get confused about this thing's anatomy. And that's so cool. For a baby Pokemon, the roundedness of the outer body still portrays that perfectly. But then the bones just add a very cool and needed flair. So instead of having just spots of color or different colored fur, something on, in many canine, feline, and horse Pokemon, equine, I guess I'll go with that, you have something internal that changes up the color scheme a little bit. And that's so cool! How many Pokemon do that? This is a perfect mirror to Galarian, right? Yeah, Galarian Ponyta. I could see these two fighting it out, maybe becoming friends in the same way I think of Espeon and Umbreon. Phantasmare. Maybe they're on my team. Really cool. It looks more like a knight's or a conquistador's steed. In fact, yeah, North America didn't have horses until then, until Europeans brought it over. So yeah, conquistador's steed is probably right there. Having it more ghostly, representing death, but having a stronger spirit. I don't think it's as intricate as Culturgeist, and thus I like the fade, how the closer you get to its body, the more blue and dark it is, and the further away it's more pasty and white. That isn't as interesting as having an internal skeletal structure as like Culturgeist has. It's adorable and so cool at the same time. Phantasmare, it's still cool. If I wasn't so blown away with Culturgeist, Phantasmare would be amazing. I would have thought it'd have like a steel secondary typing with its plating too. Culturgeist, I can understand why it wouldn't. There's such a small amount, but it foretells what Phantasmare will have. So I really like that. And it absolutely needs some sort of color. It adds extra color other than dark blue and purple for the line, which so needed. Thank God for that. But then it doesn't do anything for Phantasmare, other than maybe give a rider something to physically be on, which maybe that's all it needs. next would be Chihaha and Harlequin. And then I'll go, I don't know, a few more lines. Maybe 2, 3. Chihaha looks very adorable. Definitely supposed to be a Harlequin. And no, not the Batman one. But this looks absolutely adorable. The mixture of a dark purple and a bright red. I mean, that's just the Harlequin color scheme. But then having it on the end of its paws looks adorable. They didn't fully go all left equals one color, right is the other, which I like. I like how the front paws are more... Your eyes brought more to attention to them, as they're the bright red, while the back of the paws are just dark. You don't pay attention more. So you look more at the front face of the Pokemon. But then to balance that, it's got something on it. It's just got a diamond on its rump. And the diamond, again, is kind of brought up in its eyes. Which, really adorable. Even its posture, because of its front paws being both red, and it looking completely profile. Is that right? I think that's profile. When you look at the side of someone's head, you look at the front of the Pokemon. And then the bright yellow eyes also give a break to the stark contrast between the red and the purple everywhere else. And then just the plain white on the body. I think it looks absolutely adorable, and the happy expression just warms my heart. Harlequin definitely looks more cartoony. I think I like the adorableness of Chihaha a little bit more, but I'd still definitely have Harlequin on my team. I like how they well, first off, made it look older by extending its body. Having it just be longer does denote age. Same with the snout growing. And then having the diamond shape on its eyes look more like a scar, especially if you're just looking at one end, or one side of the face. Absolutely. You're keeping the neck frills, which obvious. And then you're also adding a ball around its assumed collar as well. So yeah, it still looks much like a dog. And then having a ball on the end of its tail, just like the end of its ears/hat. Very cool. Very cool. And even just having the legs look like really floppy, almost elf shoes. I like it. It's very strange. It's not something that It's doing Mr. Mime right. Making a clown dog. It's not just a human. It's a clown dog that works well. So many cool ideas by so many people. But then some... These are a disappointment. I hate to say that. I think the creator of Pokemon said that they want all Pokemon to seem like a friend. And these just seem like rocks. Like special rocks. And there are definitely Pokemon that don't really seem like friends. Like, what the heck is Claydol supposed to be? Claydol doesn't necessarily look like a friend, but it looks living. Looks at least sentient. And I have a really hard problem understanding how these would look sentient. But overall, still, killer designs. Oh my god, I forgot about Minorek. Killer designs. Some of these look amazing, and the art only adds to that. I'm getting to the end, and it's kind of sad, because I don't know what other fake Dexes are like. I don't know if they're gonna be made by one person or by a whole group of people. I like the group of people because if it's just one person, one of my concerns is that you will start to see similarities or common influences between that many Pokemon. And since I'm making 100, I feel like the commonalities are really going to show themselves. And that's a huge worry for any creation of made by one person. So having this many different people and this many different artists work on a lot of creatures is very, very interesting. Even though there are a few opposites, few Pokemon that I don't think I'd ever come up with, and some typing that I still find very confusing, I just have fun trying to understand everyone's thought processes. And I can't wait for the final video 5, not the next one, where I'm going to delve into the specifics of what each influence of each Pokemon is. At least just a little bit. So, thank you. Check out my game, please. And have a good night.